So, ladies and gentlemen, the big debate over the summer of 2020 will be once the COVID pandemic calms down, what future players or skaters should be in the Hall of Fame. Now, there's numerous retired players that have received a call to the Hall, some borderline, and one of those borderline players, it depends how you look at it. Some people say he shouldn't be in the Hockey Hall of Fame, while others say he was one of the most dominant players of his era and he should be in there. Of course, we're going to talk about probably one of the most, what do you call it, either debated or disregarded Montreal Canadiens players of the last 35 years. Of course, we're going to talk about Stephane Joseph Jean-Jacques Richer, better known as Stephane Richer, or better known by in my column as the Sniper. Now, he's probably one of the best right wingers in NHL history. Obviously, one of the best for the Montreal Canadiens. In his career, he had a very successful, what they call, multiple goal campaigns. Played for the Habs as a top-ranked young player. Also skated with the Devils, Tampa Bay Lightning, St. Louis Blues, and Pittsburgh Penguins. Now, he came to Montreal in a very good draft for the Montreal Canadiens in 1984, where several of their top players towards the 86 and 89 Stanley Cup final teams were taken. He was drafted 29th overall in that 84 draft. Now, he played in 1,054 career NHL games, scoring 421 goals and 398 assists for his 819 points. Now, he won the Calder Cup with the Sherbrooke Canadiens in 84, the Stanley Cup with the Canadiens in 86, the Montreal Canadiens, of course, and with the Devils in 95. Now, after his Stanley Cup run in New Jersey, he found himself bouncing from team to team through trades including Pittsburgh, Tampa Bay, St. Louis, and a second stint in Montreal, and even a trip back to the minors before ultimately retiring. See, the problem is with Richer within the media, there was rumors of all kind of off-ice peccadillos, which I don't really want to get into because I don't want to be sued. And no offense, I'll let the police forces at the time took care of that. But he has been made a mockery within certain members of the media and certain fans of the Habs. Even on my podcast channel, on some people posting on the John Cordick podcast I did, they were insulting Richer, which had nothing to do with the Cordick podcast. That's how he's acclaimed or disregarded. He's a very, what do you call, a divisive player in Montreal Canadiens lore. I basically feel he was the Connor McDavid of his era, a good talent. Like Connor McDavid, he could get a goal out of nowhere, while other people thought he was overrated. Well, I don't think he was overrated because he scored 50 goals twice for the Montreal Canadiens. You must have some talent. Now, where Rishi was what you call a money player, he's among all-time leaders, tied in second with six other players, in playoff overtime goals with four. Uh, Scored a big goal in '89 for the Habs against the Whalers in the Adams Division semifinal. 27 seconds in overtime against Boston, the Adams in '91. Uh, Game four victory in '94, and Game one victory in Eastern Conference Finals for New Jersey. And he was a big part of that strong run for the '94 and '95 Devils. Now, his two seasons with the Habs scoring 50 goals came in 87-88 with 50 and 89-90 with 51. And he's the only other Montreal Canadian player besides Guy Lafleur to score 50 goals twice. And he's also the last player to have scored 50 goals in a year for the Canadiens. Now, he was traded back to the Canadiens in '96, but it didn't really work out. And what really impacted him as well, which he's talked many times, he had been battling depression for the majority of his career. Now, he was sort of like one of the first players to come out in the NHL to say major depression had impacted his life. He basically said on Quebec talk shows that he could have easily scored 600 goals, but the depression really hurt him. He felt at times he wasn't doing enough for Montreal, even though winning two cups. To me, the '86 and '89 Habs, overachieved in many ways, and that was was two finals right there. And with the Devils, he made a very strong defensive team offensively better, which was very important. Now, Richer was known to have one of the harder shots in NHL, extremely quick release, and he perfected the snapshot. Now, the snapshot is a shot from waist height to get hard power, and it was ironic that Fleer recognized him in a subgrouping in their set in 1994-95 under the slapshot artist. Now, allegedly, he was at his best with the Devils, and unofficially, he recorded slap shots of more than 100 miles an hour. Now, in a well-documented legend, during one pregame warm-up session in New Jersey, Richer fired a slap shot at his own goalie, Martin Brodeur, which shattered a cup in Brodeur's jockstrap, leaving him bruised and nauseated. Brodeur allegedly had to leave the ice and change equipment moments before the game started. Now, a very, very interesting thing about Richer, he was deceptively large, 6'3", 225. You wouldn't call Richer a power forward because he wasn't in the Eric Lindros bark. He was good on defense and offense. But like I said, scouts basically criticized Richer on many, many occasions for not squeezing more production out of his talent because of his size and skills and all that. And he was called like a coaster by a lot of people, especially in key games against Boston and Quebec. Now, in retirement, he basically has done a lot to give back to minor hockey. He's toured with numerous Montreal alumni squads through the years, and an infamous visit to Woodstock, New Brunswick in 2010, which I covered when him and Lafleur came in, gave a great performance. But what's very interesting, the first half of his career, where he got the majority of the goals and points, he was also the youngest Montreal Canadian to score his 100 goals. He was only 22 years of age with 205 days. And I must go back with this. His QM JHL numbers were very impressive. He was averaging close to a goal a game over 4 seasons with Laval, Granby, and Chicoutimi. So he wasn't overrated coming out of the queue. He figured he would be another kind of Pierre Turgeon meets Pat LaFontaine. Now, the idea with the Canadians, again, when you have a player could score 50 goals and only gets 30, like several seasons, 38, 39, he basically could have done everything possible as a Montreal Canadian with Montreal. Like I said, it was a love-hate relationship between Richer, and the media rolled him through the coals, ladies and gentlemen. He was basically a joke to many of the press. I covered him during his his prime years, and to see Richer in action, it was basically if Steve Shutt and Guy Lafleur were going to have a child, how Shutt would finish a play. Remember that '84 Game 6 against Quebec in that famous Game 6, the riot, where Shutt scored 2 quick goals. That was as quick as it could be. Naslund had skating power and passing power. Napier had goal scoring power, but Richer, at every opportunity, he would bring his own style to the shot, to the net. He wasn't basically a playmaker. He was a goal scorer, and that was criticized him again. Where certain seasons, for example, in '89-90, when he scored that 51 goals, a lot of people thought he was going to get 100 points, but he had some difficulty again on the defensive side on occasions, and the press criticized him left and right and center, saying, we expect so much more. Like, there's a very interesting line by Steve Shutt. I think it's in the Game, and it's on other publishing. He said in Montreal, if you score 40, they'll want 50 next year. If you score 50, they want 60. And as you know, Steve Shutt scored that 60 goals in '77 and never could get back to 50 because, imagine being in the dressing room and the reporter for the English or French sports like La Presse or the Gazette said, well, you only scored 2 goals tonight. How come you didn't get the hat trick? I mean, you can't function and stuff like that. And Richer being the depressive person he was, not exactly sure what form of depression, but some of these off ice choices too. I don't want to get into it, but it's not say well known, but I just wonder exactly why Richer made those bad life choices, partying and stuff like that. I don't want to get into it. I'm only talking about the player. And as a player, it was a pleasure to watch, pleasure to cover. He kind of helped rebuild that franchise in the 86 and 89 cup runs. By 93, I don't think Richer would have been around for the 93 cup. Uh, Maybe in the mid 90s when he came back, they had enough players for another cup run, but again, they didn't have Carey Price yet. That was a big factor as well. Patrick Roy happened to be gone, and Jocelyn Thibault wasn't going to do it. So, I still wonder if all factors would have played together. If Richer, you would have gotten the mental health, and he would have encouraged Patrick Roy to stay. Fire Ridge on Houlimer Travel, which was, we talked about the previous podcast. Maybe Montreal could have done a major cup run in the mid 70s after 93. But they had the players, ladies and gentlemen. Imagine Turgeon and Richer on the same power play, and the young players coming up like a Brian Savage and stuff like that. Ribeiro came after, but you see where I'm coming from. What it should have, could have. Everybody second guesses hockey. That's where the job is. So actually, this podcast is dedicated to all the non-Montreal Canadiens fans on the Brunswick Independent Authors Association, but they can all agree that Richer should have scored 500 goals, maybe 600. Was it a waste? Don't know. Is he a candidate for Hall of Fame? Again, certain people with similar stats or better stats are not in the Hall of Fame. Guy Carbonneau got in where a defensive player, I can understand. But Richer might make it one of these days. It depends if you look back at his era and his 250 goal seasons and the consistency in the two cups. You say, this player was one of the best. He's a top 50 player of the 1980s, in my estimation. And I'm standing by that. Anyway, on this COVID Friday, where I might be taking a break this weekend from podcasting, visiting some family in St. John. I'm wishing everybody to stay healthy. Don't remember June 9th. Read the government of Brunswick website press release to know the safety procedures for using the mask. Be careful. Like I said, short-term pain for long-term gain. And to all the protesters in Canada States, be safe on the lines. Try to do your best. We're all praying and thinking about you. Have a good day.